Vice President of Operations, Life Sciences, and Healthcare for DHL Supply Chain North America, and one of the winners of this year's Women in Supply Chain Award presented by Supply and Demand Chain Executive Denise. First off, congratulations. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm pretty excited.
I'm excited for you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your company, your role, and kind of how you got to this point in your career?
Sure. No, so I am married with 2 kids. So outside of this busy life of supply chain, I also have a very active life outside of that with 2 kids, one in college and one in high school. They both were very active in club and travel sports. So you can imagine what life is like outside of that. But from a professional perspective, I've been in the distribution industry for about 25 years, and I have had the pleasure of doing a lot of different things. I've held multiple roles across the DHL organization, and then for a couple of organizations prior to that. So I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to do a bunch of different things. Currently, as you mentioned, I am inside of the Life Sciences business unit here at DHL Supply Chain, and with that, I hold responsibility for managing our J&J account, which is the largest account that we have in the Life Sciences business unit, and we do distribution of consumer and medical devices for them. It's a pretty big network on the consumer side, and we're just getting ready to launch actually their largest medical device center, which is highly automated. So it's pretty fun time, pretty active, pretty busy. In fact, I'm here in Indianapolis doing that right now.
So what kind of attributes do you think a successful supply chain leader should have to get to these certain stages in their roles?
Oh, it's a good question. So when I think of that, I mean, it's multi-pronged, right? So you've got to have somebody who is like a strategic and a forward thinker, right? But that only gets you so far. You've got to have the right team members too, in order to be able to accomplish what you need to accomplish, because you've got, you set these goals and you're looking forward to where you're going, but if you don't have the right team in place, then you're likely not going to get there. And you have to have a team that can execute what you've got going on now. They can work with you on the growth and all the forward-looking stuff. But in addition to that, especially in this day and age right now, you've got to have somebody who's a strong problem solver. We've had a lot of challenges this year and last year with COVID, and it's really also required us to be very agile and very flexible. So I would say that would be another one. A lot of supply chain gymnastics going on these days. So I would say those are likely the key ones. But without a really great team and the ability to think strategically with your team and your customer, I think those are the key ones.
So I don't need to tell you that the supply chain has definitely endured a range of challenges over the last 18 months, as I'm sure you're very aware of that. So what kind of challenges have you and your team specifically faced, and kind of how have you worked to overcome them?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we've had a handful. It's been a bit of a rough year. Obviously, I think probably the largest one that most folks are running up against, which we are as well, is just the pure labor shortage. As a result of COVID, we're seeing very low unemployment rates, and it's really been a struggle to get people to come to work, to get people to come to interviews. So we've kind of changed up and are starting to focus more on how we attract and retain. And then obviously, once we've got them here, how are we keeping them? And we typically, are taking a much stronger focus on what we call our operations management system, and really starting to bring folks in and develop that culture that keeps them from wanting to go somewhere else, even if that's, down the street for a slightly higher rate of pay. And because you do, and unfortunately in this environment, do see a lot of that mobility with just even a slight amount of change in pay structure. And then we've had, there's been an insurmountable, crazy impact of steel in our industry, steel pricing in our industry, that, not only is it delayed from a timeline perspective, but the costs have gone incredibly through the roof. And so that's been another one we've been up against. And that one's really hard to mitigate against. It's more about planning on the time, planning the timeline around it, and just monitoring, watching the costs, because costs change quite literally from week to week. So it's a real challenge to be able to prepare and plan with your customer what they should expect from a cost implication.
So the supply chain industry overall has kind of been this traditionally male dominated industry. Thanks to women like you, we're seeing that evolve and kind of change. So, kind of how has it been for you being in this kind of role and other roles that you've been in a male dominated industry?
It's not the first time I've been asked the question, and it's a hard one, believe it or not, for me to answer. And I think it's hard because I've been in the industry for so long that I just don't think of there being a large difference, right? For me, and that could be different for somebody who, is not coming in from this industry or right out of school or whatever the case may be. But I think at the end of the day, it's really about, gaining. It's no different whether you're here in this industry or another industry, but it's about gaining the respect of your peers through, credibility and through your work and what you're able to deliver. And I found that to be true at DHL. I mean, do you have to engage differently? Sometimes, yes, but you would engage differently and adjust your personality or not personality as much, but your presentation and your approach, depending on whoever it was. So it's a hard question for me to answer because I've been fortunate enough to have really grown up here at DHL. So many of these folks I've worked with for years, and I think once you have the credibility and the reputation, it really makes that bridge very easy to cross.
So you touched on the labor shortage earlier about trying to, recruit and retain employees. So kind of what should companies be doing to kind of recruit and retain more women in the supply chain?
So I do think that there is more we can do there. I think putting women more front and center in things like college recruiting or in different forums where, they can be spotlighted around their work or around a particular industry discussion, I think would be helpful because you don't tend, and I don't think it's intentional, you just don't tend to see that a lot. So that you maybe putting those, putting women in those types of spotlights, I think would help to open up that door a little bit more and kind of show, potential future leaders the potential that exists out there.
So what advice do you have for those starting out in the industry? And maybe what would you tell your younger self?
So that's a good way to ask it. So I think, don't be afraid is probably, you are who you are. So just get out there and do it. And I think the main thing, and I've told people this for years, go out there and do the hard work and learn the nuts and the bolts, because it's really about building and running your own business. Every single customer that you engage with and site that you go to, it's a business. It's an individual business. So get out there, understand it, understand what makes it work, what doesn't make it work, where things can be improved and look at continuous improvement opportunities, and then start to expand into finance and commercial and continuous improvement and all of these other things, because, the more you know as an individual, the more valuable you become as a player in the industry and to whatever organization, that you work with. But I think sometimes, I can only speak for myself, but, when I was younger, I lacked that confidence that, as you learn more and you grow more, you get more confident about who you are and what you're able to do. So that would be my message: is have some confidence in yourself, go out there and learn it. You're going to make mistakes. We all do, but learn from them.
So how does it feel to be named one of Supply and Demand Chain Executives' top women in supply chain?
Well, it's very flattering. I was very surprised and very honored. It was very exciting. So I am very appreciative of the opportunity and very, very happy that hopefully it shows my organization that I'm able to contribute back to them. And I'm very thankful for the opportunities that I've been given inside of DHL, because certainly they have been a platform that has allowed me to do a lot of the things that I've done.
Well, thank you to you and your team and your company for everything that you do to keep the supply chain moving, because it's been a rough ride out there for a lot of folks. So I appreciate everything that you've been doing. Denise Mager, Vice President of Operations, Life Sciences, and Healthcare for DHL Supply Chain North America, and one of the recipients of Supply and Demand Chain Executives Women in Supply Chain Award. To learn more about Denise, go to stcexec.com. Thank you.
Thank you.